And sometimes those storms of life, they are hard to move through. But I promise you, if you reconnect back to the very things that reconnect you back to your identity, who you are, and what you're about, you'll be able to withstand that storm, my friend. What is up, my dear friends, and welcome back to another episode of Honey, I'm Home. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can begin to reconnect back to your roots in life, especially when you feel like you're going through a storm in your life. This past weekend, I had an incredible opportunity to go back to my hometown with my wife, and it was a great moment in time in which I could allow myself to disconnect from the daily doing and reconnect back to my core roots of being. And let me tell you something. When you feel like life is throwing a bunch of storms at you, and you feel like you might get a little bit overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're worried, you're confused, you're not very clear. Sometimes in those moments, we oftentimes need to get back to our foundation. We need to get back to the foundational roots that can really help us to feel like we know who we are, and life is not getting away from us. It's just a moment in time. It's a storm, and connecting back to your roots can be very, very beneficial. So I'm going to talk about the 3 reasons on why I think connecting back to your roots are important, as well as the 3 big ideas that you can begin to implement in your own life that can help you to reconnect back to those very foundational roots. But before we dive into that, I just want to share with you the story that I wrote on my Instagram page over this past week that I thought was kind of wraps up where this conversation comes from. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can kind of see on my, maybe you can kind of see different videos. I don't know, regardless, it's hard to do this, but pictures and videos of like me going back to my hometown and how much fun it was. And I just said this past weekend, I had the chance to go back to my hometown and reconnect with something I hadn't done for over 15 years. I got to ride dirt bikes with my older brother. It was a thrill I haven't felt in years, a rush of pure joy that took me back to a simpler time when life was less complicated and the only thing that mattered was the ride. My wife and I also joined my family on a wild trip to a haunted prison, an adventure that was both eerie and unforgettable. But as fun as it was, the real lesson I took away from this past weekend was deeper than just the activities. It reminded me of the power of returning back to your roots. You know, when life feels chaotic, disconnected, or overwhelming, sometimes the best way to find balance and joy is to reconnect to the very things you grew up doing. Whether it's a childhood hobby, time spent with family, or visiting places that shaped you, these moments ground us. They remind us of who we are at our core. And happiness isn't always about achieving the next big thing. It's often found in the moments that reconnect you back to your true self. That's where this conversation begins, my dear friends. Welcome to Honey, I'm Home. Today is a episode all about just connecting back to your roots and understanding the importance of that. But before we dive into today's episode, my dear friend, if you're currently someone who is feeling stuck, you feel like you don't have clarity on understanding what are your next steps that you need to take in order to move on from the painful past of a heartbreak, a breakup, separation, divorce. If you feel like you're a high achiever, especially when you were in your relationship, like you could get a lot of things done, you were clear-headed, you were focused, you were energized, you were motivated, you felt like you had vitality in your life, and then when your relationship crumbled, you felt like you crumbled and you lost vitality, you lost aliveness, you lost focus, you lost your dream, ambition, your charge of life. If you feel like that, I have a free masterclass training, Healing Hearts Masterclass. It's going to help you to win yourself back by giving you the focused direction that you need to take, the very path that you need to take in order to move on from that heartbreak, breakup, separation, or divorce, so that you can reclaim your aliveness, win from within, and finally move on toward a hope-filled future, my dear friend. You can find that masterclass at happyheartacademy.com/moving on, or you can click in the show notes below. And there you can go through the masterclass that tens of thousands of people have enrolled in and have helped them to gain some focus, gain some clarity, understanding of, hey, what should I be doing rather than what I shouldn't be doing? Sometimes what stops us from being able to move on in life is focusing on something that's not serving us. It's oftentimes either distracting us or it's not allowing us to fully pay attention to the feeling that we need to spend some time with in order to heal. So if you're struggling to move on and to create a sense of happiness after your heartbreak, like I once did, be sure to check out the link in the show notes below. Now on to today's episode, like always, my dear friends, on the importance of reconnecting back to your roots. My friend, like I got done saying, looking back at this past weekend, it was a thrilling moment. I'm not saying that my life is in shambles or it's hectic or that it's complicated right now or frustrating or anxious or stressed. I'm not saying that at all. I just realized that when I went back home and visited my family and did something, that I haven't done in such a long time, it really helped me to feel grounded in the being rather than the doing. And it allowed me to stop identifying with the doing, and it allowed me to start to identify with the being. We're called human beings, not human doings, and oftentimes we allow our doing to identify who we are as individuals. We're always being placed in this box of your worth is found in what you can provide. Your worth is found in the deliverables that you get done and in the productivity that you are chasing, as high performers or as people that are focused on high performing activities. Your worth is found in what you do, and it becomes challenging because I'm not always fulfilled in the very things that I do, but I'm more fulfilled in the very things that I just allow myself to be wrapped up in the very present moment. And it was such a beautiful moment in time when I got to spend about 3.5 hours riding dirt bikes out in the wilderness with my brother. And it just puts you in the present moment. It taps you into, you can't think about anything else besides being on the bike. Because the moment that I took my focus off the bike was the very moment that I crashed. I crashed about 5 different times in 3 hours. Not anything crazy, but still hit a tree, went over a bank, laid it over a couple times, and man, did I have so much fun. And, oftentimes in this life, when we go through a heartbreak, a breakup, separation, divorce, or just a storm in life, we feel uprooted. We feel like our life or the carpet of life is ripped from underneath our feet, and we no longer have some foundational, a strong foundation to stand on. And man, do I relate to that. I want to help you to connect back to your roots so that when you go through a storm, a life storm, regardless of what that storm is, you feel emotionally resilient, strong, positive, hopeful, and still have your motivation, still have your hope, still have your dream, still have yourself, more importantly, so that when that storm blows in, you don't feel like you lose yourself, you don't feel like you lost everything. And the way that you do that is really by allowing yourself to identify a couple of things that ultimately that you connect with, right? And I just think that it's really important for you to be able to connect to your roots. When life feels a little bit unstable, when it feels like, you whether you went through a heartbreak, a breakup, separation, divorce, or a personal struggle, it seems to be easy to get and feel disconnected from yourself and your sense of identity. And you may even start questioning who you are, your purpose, or what's next. I know I've been there. And anytime I go through, a loss of a career path, or maybe I went through a breakup, maybe I went through a loss of my father-in-law, a death in a family, sometimes you just feel disconnected from yourself and your sense of identity. And heck, if you're anything like me, you may start questioning who you are, what your purpose is, what's next. And that's why I think it's really important for you to return back to your roots, because they can be the most important thing to ground you back to your identity, toward healing, and just toward more confidence in this very moment in time. Your roots represent your foundation, right? They represent where you come from. the values that you hold and the experiences that shaped you. They remind you of your strengths, your worth, and your resilience. And that's what this past weekend did for me. As I was back on a dirt bike, I used to race motocross. For those of you that don't know, I grew up in a family that spent more time on dirt bikes and four-wheelers and in the backwoods rather than taking family vacations. We went camping, hunting, hiking, fishing, and that's how I grew up. And I missed out on that when I started to pursue my football career. I got into high school and college. I stopped pursuing the very things that I used to be anchored to, that used to allow me to disconnect in order to reconnect back to the being part of the human experience rather than the doing part of the human experience. And anytime I just allow myself to be, I just feel less anxious, less confused, less maybe stressed. And I'm telling you something, I wish that you could have experienced and felt, and I know that you will be able to if you apply some of these ideas or just start to think about, how can I start to reconnect back to my roots? But here's a couple of reasons that I believe why connecting back to your roots are really important. I think reconnecting back to your roots ground you. Just like a tree needs strong roots to stay upright, you need to stay strongly connected to your foundation to stay grounded. When everything feels chaotic, I just need you to sit back and remember that where you came from can provide the stability that you need. Even if you had a tough childhood like I had, right? It can give you something solid to hold on to when your emotions feel overwhelming and the life storm erupts, the hurricane blows through, the tornado comes flying in, randomness takes place, and you feel uprooted. I didn't have the greatest childhood. I didn't have a terrible childhood, but I grew up in a broken home. So when I reflect on my childhood, I oftentimes see reflections of the pain that my childhood caused me, the disconnection or the unfulfillment that I felt when my parents were going through their divorce, right? But I also remember some core activities that I did in my childhood, whether it be bike riding or dirt bike riding or going camping or fishing or hunting or hiking, being out in the woods or playing in the streams and building dams and, allowing myself to explore the kid nature within my own heart and mind that we never lose, we just disconnect from. Really helps you to feel more grounded, and it helps you to be able to withstand the storm, and it helps you to really be able to feel like, hey, I know who I am. I remember where I came from, and it just helps me to feel good in this moment, knowing that I've endured so much. Because when you reflect on your past, you'll probably realize that and have the same realization that I did is like, man, Tyler, I'm proud of you. You've made it a long way and you're doing really well for yourself. Think about all of the obstacles and times of heartache and struggle and chaos and turmoil that you've overcome. When I allow myself to reflect on that, I'm like, wow, I'm an overcomer. I'm a high achiever, and I'm someone who wants greatness to be in my daily life. And so this past weekend allowed me to step out of my digital environment. I'm sitting here inside of One Team Studio, Studio One, and it's all surrounded by bright lights. My eyes are hurting if you're watching this, but bright lights, high tech, and just technology everywhere. I'm always connected to a screen that's sitting in front of me, and it oftentimes makes me feel rapidly fatigued, meaning like I get tired rapidly when I'm sitting in front of a computer for too long. And then I go home, and then I find myself sitting in front of a computer again to be working with clients, working on a business, working on maybe just playing some video games, maybe watching TV. I'm always connected to the screen, and it's driving me insane. And when I allowed myself to disconnect from all of the digital distractions and reconnected to my being by stepping into the wilderness or out in the woods and putting myself in a position to only I do something that only allows me to be fully present in that moment, man, did I feel really grounded? Did I feel really good? Did I remember who I was and the excitement of life? The second big idea on why I think it's really important for you to connect with your roots is because your roots remind you of your internal strength. You are resilient. The human being is resilient. They're overcomers. Your past is full of experiences where you've overcome difficulties, grown and proven your emotional resilience. Looking back at those moments of life, right, can remind you that just like before, you have your ability to get through this, you have your ability to figure things out, and you have faced hardship and have came out stronger than before, and you will again. So when you connect back to your roots, it's really about thinking about the things that you've done in the past that allowed you to not feel so distracted. Connecting back to your roots. Now, it can look differently for you. I spend a lot of time connecting back to my roots means that I go out into the wilderness and spend time out in the woods, out in nature. And because that's where I spent a lot of my childhood, is out in the woods and out in nature, whether it be riding bikes, building forts, building log cabins. I wish I had these pictures back when my brother and I would spend time all summer chopping down trees and building log cabins and riding dirt bikes. We built some really cool cabins that bears ended up tearing down and hunters ended up using. But, I digress. The idea here is that it reminds you of when you disconnect from all the digital distraction to reconnect back to your roots. You think about the past and what roots you, what grounds you, and you'll see that what grounds you, it will reconnect you with your past, and your past, if it's anything like mine, will bring up, like I said, moments of turmoil, struggle, pain, exhaustion, fatigue, heartache, and grief. And when it does, you're going to see where you were then and where you are now, and hopefully reflect in a positive manner that's going to be like, hey, I'm proud of you. You're doing pretty good for yourself. You've made it this far. You've been there. You've done that. You can do it again. This is not the first time. This is not the last time. And this isn't the only time that someone in the human experience has ever went through this, right? So when you allow yourself to just put yourself in a place that allows you to feel like you're reconnecting back to yourself, back to your roots, you're going to be able to think with more a positive head and more clarity, and have the positive thoughts that you need to be able to overcome this. And the last thing I really want to really bring up for why it's important for you to connect back to your roots here, my friend, is I believe that your roots help you to rebuild the relationship that you have with yourself, because it requires you to connect back with who you are at your core and drawing from the strength to grow into new directions. When you revisit your past, you can see oftentimes how you used to be when life was much more simpler. You had hopes, dreams, desires. You weren't so worried. You weren't so stressed. You weren't so anxious. You just allowed yourself to wake up, eat, go out, and your main goal was to not be bored, to go out and have fun. Boredom was our worst enemy, right? We hated being bored, so we went outside and we played kickball, we played football, we played baseball, we built cabins, we built tree houses, we built little dams and creeks, we rode pedal bikes for hours, we played hide and go seek, we played jailbreak, we were always just outside. But what this really does when you allow yourself at an older age to reconnect back to your foundation by putting yourself into an environment that helps you to reconnect back to yourself, and connecting back to you helps you to rebuild the relationship with yourself so that you can build the emotional resilience that you need to overcome the storm that life has to throw at you, that will throw at you, So I think it's just important for all of us to allow ourselves to disconnect in order to reconnect back to our roots sometimes. Because in those very roots, we will be able to remind ourselves who we are, or who we were, and who we want to become. And it allows us to regather. It allows us to visualize and reconnect to who we once were and who we always were. So it's listen, reconnecting back to your roots are everything. If your roots are deep enough, you'll be able to withstand any storm that you go through. It can be losing a loved one, a child. It could be, going through, terminal illness and struggle, but being rooted in something that reminds you that you are an overcomer is going to help you to build your emotional resilience, my friend. So Let me give you 3 big ideas on what you can begin to do to reconnect back to your roots. Like, what are some of the things? And the first big idea here is when I felt like my life was getting a little bit blurry, like, hey, what are my next steps? What do I really need to be focusing on? Is what I'm currently focusing on actually what I want to be doing? And is it something that I'm excited about, or is it something that I'm just doing just because I feel like I should be doing it? And I didn't really have clarity on that. I didn't have the answers, and that's why I like going back home. I can connect with my family, with some friends. I can get outside, ride some dirt bikes, hang out, do a cookout, have a fire, just connect to the boyhood. And when you reflect on the past and you connect back to your roots and ask yourself the questions that you need answers to, you will find your answers. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened. A biblical scripture that I absolutely love. But when you need to, if you're struggling to connect back to your roots, you need to reflect on the past and take some time to think about the people, places, and moments that have shaped you, and maybe revisit those people, places, and moments that have shaped you. Like I said, the good news about my childhood was vacations didn't really shape me as much as the wilderness did. So when I go on a hike around here where I live now, when I reconnect back to the woods, maybe I go fishing, maybe I go hunting, maybe I go hiking, it helps me to just reconnect back to who I am and to get the answers that I'm really looking for. But sometimes we distract ourselves too much and our vision becomes blurry. And with blurry vision, we're not very certain on what our next couple moves should be. And so I just challenge you to take some time to reflect on your past and maybe go visit some people, some places. Maybe you go visit some moments in your life and journal about them, meditate on them, marinate them, and just allow them to help you to see who you truly are. The second big idea here is something that I did this past weekend that helped me to reconnect back to my roots, is simply just reconnecting back to loved ones. Like I said, I got to go home and, just find comfort in being back in my hometown, finding comfort being back with my dad and my brother and my mom, with my wife and my dog. We got to reconnect with some friends when we went riding and just brought up some fun stories and, remember whens and remember when life used to be so easy and all we had to worry about was waking up and listening to music, eating chicken nuggets and going out riding. When you reconnect with loved ones, you just feel like they oftentimes can remind you of the love and support that has always been there that you might not always be connected to because life oftentimes throws busyness at us. Work throws busyness at us that distract us from being able to connect with those that we love because we're too fatigued to connect with those that we love, or we're too busy to reconnect and reach out to those that we love because work or, whatever it is has you tied up and you feel like that is the most important thing. When the most important thing in life, in my eyes, are the relationships that we develop in our lives. And, at the end of our lives, we're going to hope that, the relationships that we built really, truly had an impact, that we loved and that we mattered in each one of those relationships. And that's why I have this whole brand wrapped around rebuilding relationships with yourself, others, and God. So, if you are struggling to reconnect to your roots, you got to revisit the past, you got to reconnect with some loved ones. And last but not least, what I want to bring up today is really, you got to do what you love. You got to do what you love. You got to allow yourself to reconnect with passions or hobbies that you once enjoyed, that can help you to rediscover the joy and fulfillment that might have dimmed after you went through your storm of life, whether it be a heartbreak, a separation, a breakup, a divorce, a loss of a loved one, a career change, a moving of locations, of living. Those moments in life can often dim our light in life. And so I want to help you to focus back on doing what you love. And I'm not only telling you, but I also do these things. Like, some of you might not like this. I read it on Threads a lot, but like I spend maybe an hour to 5 hours a week playing video games, reconnecting with my childhood best friends. And it's more of not to play video games as much as it's to reconnect and talk to them. And that just helps me to reestablish like a friendship that I've had since kindergarten, to allow myself to connect to the goofiness, to the funniness, to the laughter, to the memories of my childhood, you know. And I hope that that never leaves. I hope that we never grow out of that. I hope that we always have a space and place to connect online, to have some fun, and to pick on each other and talk smack on each other, and really remind ourselves and each other like of who we are, and you know, doing what you love, whether it's playing video games, going out for hikes, going to the beach, visiting, you know, different beautiful locations that you and your family might have done. Maybe it's going camping. I don't know what your life looks like, only you do. But I recommend this week is just spend some time reconnecting back to your roots and what you used to do that you no longer do, that because either you feel maybe you're too old to do those things, or maybe perhaps you feel like you're too busy to do those things. I just want you to know, like, my main message today is to make time for you, reconnect back to your roots so that you can feel like you are deeply grounded and rooted into who you are, your identity. So when life throws a storm at you, you feel unshakable. You feel grounded. You feel like you can withstand a storm of life. And sometimes those storms of life, they are hard to move through. But I promise you, if you reconnect back to the very things that reconnect you back to your identity, who you are, and what you're about, you'll be able to withstand that storm, my friend. You will be able to create a sense of hope, motivation, happiness, aliveness, vitality, fulfillment that you've been missing out on because you're either technically too old to reconnect back to the things that you used to do as a child. You know, and I think that's also, and I don't have children yet, but I think that's the blessing of children, is that they reconnect you back to your childhood. They reconnect you back to your child's self. So if you have children, spend some time with them to do what they are doing, get into their world, allow them to disconnect you from your own distraction of life, and allow that to ground you back to who you once were. Yeah, I hope this podcast episode served you today. I hope that you found it helpful, encouraging, supportive, and or uplifting. And if you did, I would love for you to leave a review for me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the podcast app. If you are on YouTube watching this, I thank you for being here. I thank you for spending your time with me today. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And once again, if you feel alone or you feel like you're lacking aliveness in life, happiness in life, wonder in life, and you feel like you were once a high achiever, life threw a storm at you, now you feel uprooted and you feel like you want to get your life back, but you're not sure how, be sure to check out the links in the show notes below, because you can join me inside the Happy Heart Academy community. And there I can help you be held accountable with a bunch of other people who are holding me accountable to continue to live and explore my best life, my best self, and continue to work on me so that I can build beautiful and loving relationships with myself, others, and God, and everything in between. So, my dear friends, I hope that you found this podcast helpful today. And if you did, let me know, leave a review. And until next time, my name is Tyler Joe Stratton, and this is Honey, I'm Home.